My in-laws kicked me to the curb and said, "He's the owner. You're just a guest." My husband agreed. I walked off calmly, then sent a legal notice that had them crying in the driveway by morning. I met Mark during our college years in Austin, Texas. He was charismatic, came from a wealthy family in Dallas, and had a way of making me feel special. I was from a modest background in El Paso, but we connected over shared interests and dreams. After graduation, we got married. Mark's parents gifted us a house in a Dallas suburb. It was in his name, a detail they never let me forget. At first, I didn't mind. I was in love and believed we were building a life together. I contributed to our home, both financially and emotionally. I managed the household, paid for renovations, and supported Mark's career. Despite my efforts, his parents treated me like an outsider. They'd make comments about my background, my education, and even my cooking. Mark started to change. He'd laugh at their jokes, dismiss my concerns, and gradually, I felt more like a tenant than a partner. The breaking point came during a family dinner. Mark's mother looked at me and said, "This house is in Mark's name. You're just a guest here." Mark nodded in agreement. I packed a bag and left that night. The next morning, I consulted a lawyer. Texas is a community property state, meaning assets acquired during marriage are jointly owned, regardless of whose name is on the title. I had rights. We gathered evidence, bank statements, receipts, anything showing my contributions. We sent a legal notice to Mark and his parents, outlining my rights and demanding a fair division of assets. Mark was furious. He called me, accusing me of betrayal. I stood firm. The legal proceedings were lengthy, but eventually, we reached a settlement. I received a fair share of the property's value and additional compensation. I used the money to start anew. Found a new place, pursued further education, and focused on rebuilding my life. Mark and his parents were left to reflect on their actions. The house that symbolized their superiority became a reminder of their arrogance. Things didn't stay quiet for long after the legal notice. Mark's parents started telling everyone that I was trying to steal the house. They said I'd manipulated Mark into marrying me just to get a piece of their family property. I heard it from mutual friends, from neighbors, even from people at my old job. They were spinning the story hard. One morning, I got a call from my former sister-in-law, Rachel. She sounded shaken. She told me Mark's mom had gone over to her place crying, saying I was threatening the family. Rachel didn't believe her. She'd always said Mark's parents were too controlling. That was the first time I heard that Mark's dad had tried to pressure Rachel's fiancé into signing a prenup that would have left him with nothing. Rachel told me something else too. Mark had been cheating on me during the last year of our marriage. I didn't want to believe it, but she sent me screenshots, texts, photos. It wasn't even just one person. Mark had been seeing a coworker, and some other woman from his gym. Suddenly, everything clicked. The coldness, the distance, the weird work trips. I wasn't just pushed out because they saw me as a guest. They wanted me out to make room for someone else. It made me sick. Not because I missed him, but because I had spent so long questioning myself. I thought I wasn't enough. Turns out, they were just rotten people. I didn't let that distract me, though. My lawyer and I kept building the case. Mark's side offered a pathetic settlement first. Barely enough to cover what I'd spent on the house over the years. My lawyer laughed. We rejected it immediately. That's when things got nasty. Mark started sending messages. Long, bitter ones. He accused me of ruining his life. Said I was nothing without his family. He even hinted that he'd drag this out for years unless I backed off. He didn't know I'd already filed a motion to freeze the house sale. He and his parents had quietly listed it, probably hoping to dump it before the legal stuff caught up. But Texas law was on my side. The listing got pulled the next day. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. Mark lost his job. I heard it from Rachel first. He was let go after an internal investigation. Word was, he'd been using company funds for personal expenses. A hotel stay here. A luxury dinner there. It didn't take long for people to put it together. He'd been using company money to impress the women he was cheating with. And guess what? The woman from his gym? She ghosted him. Once the money and status were gone, so was she. Suddenly, Mark started calling again. At first, he was angry. Then desperate. He wanted to talk things out. Said maybe we rushed into legal stuff too fast. I didn't respond. He showed up at my friend Danny's place one night. Just stood outside the building for 2 hours until she threatened to call the police. He cried. Said he missed what we had. Danny told me he looked like a shell of himself. His parents were worse. They started sending me letters. Not emails, handwritten letters. Begging me not to ruin their son. Blaming me for his job loss, his depression, even their stress levels. They said they never meant for things to go this far. Said they were willing to compromise. The same people who threw me out of the house like garbage were now acting like I was their only hope. But the thing is, I still had more cards to play. A few weeks after I ignored the letters from Mark's parents, something strange started happening. I got a notice from the city about unpaid property taxes. Apparently, they hadn't been paid in over a year. I was confused because we had always paid them on time. I checked the tax office records and sure enough, it showed the payments had stopped right around the time I moved out. But here's where it got twisted. The address on file for tax notifications had been changed to the office address of Mark's dad. They were trying to keep the notices from getting to me, probably hoping I wouldn't notice until penalties stacked up and it got messy enough that I'd just give up. But they messed with the wrong person. My lawyer filed a formal complaint. That change was illegal, and it triggered an audit. Not just of the property taxes, but of several other properties under Mark's parents' names. Turns out, their finances weren't as clean as they pretended. There were shady gifts that looked a lot like hidden payments. A home they rented to a cousin for years at a price no bank would believe. It opened a whole new door. Their reputation, which they guarded like gold, was now under fire. I started getting calls from reporters. Small-time ones, but still. They caught wind of the audit and were asking questions. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't need to. The mess was making its way out all on its own. Around the same time, I found out Mark had moved in with his parents again. That perfect image of the successful son who had it all? Gone. He was unemployed, living in the guest room, and borrowing money from his mom to cover his legal bills. And because he couldn't afford his lawyer anymore, he tried to represent himself in court. It was a disaster. He showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days. Stumbled over his own words. Made wild accusations. Said I faked the marriage for money. The judge shut him down quick. My lawyer just sat there, calm as ever, handing over a folder of emails, photos, receipts, all neatly arranged. But that wasn't the twist that hit hardest. About a month later, I got a visit from a woman I didn't recognize. She was older, maybe in her late 50s, well-dressed, but clearly tired. She introduced herself as Ellen, Mark's aunt, his father's younger sister. We talked in my driveway. She said she wanted to apologize for what her family had done. That she knew about the lies, the manipulation, and even the cheating. She told me that Mark's parents had done something similar before to another woman Mark had dated seriously years ago. They'd paid her off to leave, gave her a check, and told her she'd ruin his future if she didn't disappear. That woman took the money. Ellen had tried to warn her, but she vanished without a trace. I felt sick. They'd been doing this for years. Grooming Mark to be some perfect man-child who never faced consequences, while sweeping away any woman who didn't bow to them. Ellen gave me something too, a flash drive. She said it had voice recordings and emails between Mark and his parents. Conversations where they talked about how to get me out. About hiring a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. Even how to pressure Mark into finding someone more suitable. I gave it to my lawyer immediately. That's when Mark's team started asking for mediation. They wanted to settle quietly. But it was too late for quiet. Too late for pretending they hadn't tried to erase me. They thought I'd just walk away. That I'd be scared. That I'd be like the last woman. But they were wrong. And I still wasn't done. The court date was set. I hadn't seen Mark in months. He didn't try to contact me again. Probably because his lawyer finally told him he had no leg to stand on. The recordings from his aunt's flash drive were damning. There were moments where his own voice came through clearly, saying stuff like, "She'll leave if I make it hard enough. Just give it time." His mom's voice laughing in the background made my skin crawl. On the day of the hearing, I wore a simple black dress. Not to be dramatic, but because it made me feel strong. Clean. Focused. I walked into that courtroom with my head high. Mark sat at the table looking like a man completely unprepared to face the wreckage he helped build. The judge was no nonsense. He reviewed everything, my receipts, the emails, the flash drive, even letters his parents had sent me. Then he turned to Mark and asked him flat out why he changed the tax address to his father's office. Mark stammered, tried to blame me, said I wasn't keeping up with the finances. The judge shut that down real fast. In the end, I was awarded half the value of the house, plus damages. Legal fees too. Mark was responsible for everything. His parents tried to argue that it wasn't fair. The judge told them they were lucky criminal charges weren't being filed for tampering with city records and attempting to deceive the court. And then, right before the session ended, I did something I hadn't planned. I asked to speak. I told the court that I'd made mistakes too. I stayed quiet when I should have stood up for myself. I ignored red flags. I thought love would be enough to fix something that was broken from the start. I wasn't innocent. But I learned. I turned to Mark and said, "You don't get to call me a guest in the home I helped build. Not anymore. You're the one who doesn't belong in it now." The room went silent. His parents left the courtroom before it was over. Couldn't face the judgment. Couldn't handle the shame. Their perfect son had fallen apart, and this time, no money or lies could cover it. Mark didn't even look at me as I passed him. A week later, I got a call from the realtor managing the property. Mark's parents were trying to sell it quietly again to settle their new debts. But they couldn't. The judge had placed a lien on it until I was paid in full. I watched from my car one day as movers pulled up to the house. Mark stood outside, arms crossed, pale as a ghost. His mom was pacing. His dad looked like he aged 20 years. They were loading furniture into a rental truck. Mark's old life was being boxed up, piece by piece. Rachel sent me a photo later that day. Mark sitting on the front step of that big, fancy house. Crying. Real, ugly crying. I didn't feel sorry. Not even a little. Because people like that, they think they can treat others like tools. Like background characters in their rich little fantasy. But I wasn't a side character. I was the one who set the story straight. I moved to Houston with the settlement money. Started over. Got an apartment, a quiet job I liked, and peace. Real peace. No more being called a guest. No more pretending to fit. Just me, finally free of all of them.